Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Live Better Connected podcast. This is episode 7 in the series, and today we will be talking about immersive experiences powered by 5G. And we're actually speaking to a primary school teacher in Wales, Hannah Cogbill-Davies. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. And if you have noticed, my background to all listeners, is a little different. I'm actually in my son's bedroom today because of the sort of school experience and the sort of planetary stars and planets. So we're going to look at this that sort of immersion side of things. So what is this immersion experience? It's a 5G interactive simulation experience used at the school, and it is used to enhance learning by exploring environments such as life under the sea, which the system creates and projects onto the walls. Now, it's a space that uses high-speed 5G connectivity, which is sort of the basis of this podcast. But I thought, Hannah, this is a really fascinating thing to be used in a primary school. What is it?
Amazing. Yeah, so it's absolutely, super exciting for us to have. So essentially, it's a room that we've got 4 walls, a ceiling, a floor. However, with the use of sort of technology, it's created it into an immersive space. So our children have the opportunity, I guess, to be immersed into any environment. So they have that sense of like a perception of what an environment might be like from as an imaginative as you can. So going back to sort of prehistoric times to experience dinosaurs, to experiencing life underwater, or maybe just like a typical day-to-day experience, what it would be like to maybe go to a train station, get on a train.
And so they can, what we talk about immersive, but this is all around them. And you're saying, not only can you take them into sort of a virtual kind of prehistoric world, but did I hear it right that you can also project smells in there as
Yeah, absolutely. So it really taps into all of the senses. They've got essentially the visionary, with it being projected on the walls around them, but also on the floor. But we've also got the opportunity to have smells. So, for example, when we've done the immersion of being underwater, we've had the smell of what it would smell, I guess, underwater. I can't say I've ever done that because I imagine you'd get a lot of water going up your nose. So it was really interesting, I guess, to see what that would be like.
And what has been the reaction of the children? I mean, this is, could this be something that Revolution is teaching? I mean, how did they react to it? Do they like it? Is it fun, or is it, does it mix that sort of fun and education as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for us is just the curiosity, like something that they've never ever experienced before. A bit like, what is this when they first walked in? Like, oh my gosh, like what am I seeing around me? But then, to delve deeper, to be like, wow, I can touch these walls and something's going to happen. I can experience what life swimming with whales would be like, or, I'm touching a dinosaur here and this is the reaction that we're having. It's absolutely incredible. The want to find out more, but also the links that they're having then with sort of the technology. But I think the biggest takeaway for us is that excitement and the curiosity to delve deeper, and I guess linking key skills, so key skills that they're learning in the classroom within a different environment. So can they apply those skills, and where does it take them?
Wow. And you start off with, you said you've got the prehistoric, you've got the sort of under the sea. Now, is that going to is that enough? I mean, we talked about this before, and what I was fascinated about is there's the opportunity for the children to create more content.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the vision for us. So our immersive space is linked with something called Immersive Studio. So there's almost like a menu of choice there. And the ones I've mentioned today are just, a snapshot of those. But the other opportunities are that you can create your own content. So actually, whether that be, imaginative content and really tapping into their imaginations, or actually maybe content that's in the world around them as well. So being able to maybe create, a fact file about Cadoxton and video in content around sort of the local environment, which would then be stored. So it'd almost be like an archive of the history. So maybe in 10 years to come, if somebody else was to view this, it would change, wouldn't it? But we've almost captured that for the viewers as well.
So it's almost like a modern version in some ways of creating what is it they used to dig down and you'd put it there. I can't remember what they're called now. It's a sort of millennium box that you'd open up and next and
Yeah.
find out how people lived. And wow. And I mean, how did this come about? Because Cadoxton Primary School in I think Barry Island near there. How did you get this 5G immersive space, which sounds to be having such a positive reaction to the children?
Yeah, so I'd like to call us a little bit lucky, but the Education Minister obviously visited an immersive space in another part of Wales, and he was absolutely blown away by it and was like, oh my gosh, like all children need to experience this. So as a local authority, it sort of went out to tender to say, who is interested, and we sort of put ourselves forward to say, yeah, absolutely, yes, for our children that attend our school at Cadoxton Primary School, but beyond that as well, so for our community, for businesses, for organisations, for universities, so we could really see it as a community asset that linked schools together, but also wider than that.
Wow. And for those listeners, I think we'll be having pictures coming throughout this podcast to show you what this actually looks like. And I sort of, it's very exciting. I think it's a new way of teaching. I'm fascinated by it personally. But equally, it is based on 5G technology and sort of HD cameras. And we've had, obviously, the technology has had views in the past of what people think it is, and especially around schools. Yet here you are utilising it for education. And I wanted, we talked about the reaction of the children, which seems to have been massively positive, and they've got the opportunity to learn and do things and put more content together. But what about the teachers? And then also, sort of just after that, how about the reaction of parents?
Yeah, I'd like to say that probably even the teachers were super excited, and that's why
Yeah.
we see, I guess, the excitement from our children as well, because it was really new for us. We'd never experienced something like it. We're always thinking, what next with technology? How can we make sure that we're preparing our learners for sort of 21st century learning? And this was a prime example of that. So we were like, wow, we've never experienced anything like that. We had to pause, and I guess we had to have some professional learning ourselves, because there were sort of skills and knowledge that we didn't have as practitioners, that I guess we've learned, and immersive space has sort of supported us with that, and BT as well. And the parents, I guess, for them, initially their children were going home being like, oh, I've seen dinosaurs today. And the parents were like, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing at Cadoxton Primary School? What's going on? So for us, we had to really open those doors to say, yes, they have. We've been in an immersive space. Come and have a look. Come and see what your children are learning about, so that they can continue that dialogue at home, and that excitement, continues. And then when they visit it next time, it's a new experience. But again, the parents are able to support that learning and understand what they're learning.
Wow, so parents are overwhelmingly positive about this, and as I imagine want to see it go further and see what's next, as you say. And you mentioned there something I thought was interesting, because obviously we're looking at this from the point of view of something for children and education, but equally the teachers, upskilling themselves in new technologies. And again, how does the reaction, and what are you doing to help teachers along to use this, and does this become something to add to your own CV and your own skill base?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's a journey. And what we mentioned earlier is that we started with using the content that we've already got. So it's almost being immersive in that room. How can we almost plan lessons? So what would lesson content look like? How can we link it to our inquiries that we're doing in the classroom without it being a bolt on, so that it's really authentic and sort of part of that teaching cycle? But then also, I guess, so that took professional learning itself. How do we access the studio? How do we stream the content? How does that look in the space, and planning, etc. And then the next steps for us then is creating that content, so supporting all of the practitioners in the school to create content, because we can all get out a camera and film, but actually it's so much deeper than that, isn't it? How can we make sure the content that we film is great, and is amazing? So that's sort of next steps for our professional learning, I guess. And yeah, it's on my CV, so I'd recommend everybody else to put it on theirs.
Brilliant. And again, when we were having a conversation about this, something I was quite amazed about is, obviously, you don't necessarily think of Cadoxton or well, any primary school as somewhere where you might then get businesses to start to use technologies. And you were saying to me that this can be rented out and utilised, across the businesses or learning centres, and other sort of sectors are coming to your school to utilise this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. From something as simple as probably birthday parties to something as maybe a bit more detailed as like university courses. So the content that is static on there, like obviously we've said that you can make your own, but the static content that is on there is from sort of, from maybe 2 years of age where there's like story immersions right through to like university degrees where, for example, one of them is like health. So there's this patient, they've got a bio, they've got 2 minutes to be able to sort of solve how they would save this patient's life, essentially. So it is really incredible, really diverse. And I think with that diversity, we've got a huge asset of it being really inclusive for everybody. So there is something for everybody in it.
And do you know, you mentioned inclusivity, and it's something I wanted to explore because some of the, obviously we've had the pandemic, we've got the cost of living crisis, and the opportunity to travel is not necessarily as available as it used to be. And one of the things, again, in our conversation, you were saying, you can sort of bring people to places which they may not otherwise visit in really quite amazing detail. But equally, that immersive point is they can learn whilst they're there. I was just thinking, sort of, going into space, I could touch that satellite and up would come loads of information. But from that inclusivity point of view, that ability to travel and take people places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really key for us, like you said, as a school, that actually, it's not as easy to maybe travel to, say, a different country, for example. And, for us, being able to provide that experience or provide that initial immersion, which then they think, actually, this is something I want to do further. You mentioned space as an example as well. I mean, now at Cadoxton, after we've done sort of an inquiry into space and they have been immersed, we've got a lot of our children that want to be astronauts. So as well as, I guess, that inclusivity, it sort of raises aspirations alongside it. But for us, every child in our school is able to access that, regardless of, additional learning needs, etc. It's something that is accessible for all, which is essential.
Wow. So do we think the next Tim Peake will be from Cadoxton Primary School?
Watch this space. That's all I'll say.
Brilliant, brilliant. I love that idea, and I just think the opportunities here for this technology. It just seems to go. It's like almost being able to do anything in a space. In your imagination is almost the only limit that you have.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Like your imagination is that limit.
Wow. And again, going back to sort of the children and their reaction, I mean, have you had any sort of, what have the children come to you with what they might want to use it that you haven't necessarily already thought, or is there some projects you've already got in place?
Yeah, I think, one of the first things that we had was actually we were designing the link to our inquiry, but what we're able to do now is open those doors to our learners so that they're able to make those choices. So we can use it almost as a bit of a research tool as well within the inquiry cycles. So instead of saying, this is something for everybody, it might form into mini groups. So for example, if we've got a group of learners that are really interested to find out a little bit more about this, they can use that space to say, oh, this is a video that I want to watch down there and experience it as well. I think what we're really keen to do, at Cadoxton, it's all about sort of like rich, authentic experiences, something that's going to they can take action and actually, I guess, improve them as human beings. So having the immersive space linked to that, and then them being able to take action from what they learn in the immersive space is amazing.
Wow, it sounds fascinating. I must say, I'd love to see it. I just think it's beautiful to have this in the school that you have there, and you being the sort of trailblazer with these kind of technologies. And you might expect only to be available in some kind of big corporate company, and here we have actually in a primary school. So the opportunities for other schools, and that would be my question: is have you had other schools that have come to Cadoxton that are now looking to implement it themselves?
Yeah, definitely. I think, one of the biggest things for us is that actually with the cost associated with an immersive space, we probably can't have them, in every school, but what it can be is a community asset. So we work very closely with a lot of our partner schools. So we work as something called a Pencoitre learning community. So as part of our professional learning as teachers, we opened those doors to 5 other primary schools and a cluster comprehensive school to come and engage in that learning so that they could almost use it as an asset within their community as well. I think we've got bookings from further afield, such as Cardiff, to come over as well, which will be really exciting. But I think
Brilliant.
every school would want an immersive space, you know, why wouldn't you? If you had the opportunity to. So what we need to do is a little bit of sharing and opening out as well to make sure that, you know, not just our children, but all children have the opportunity to experience it and become immersed. And I guess in that 5G technology world.
Well, I hope we can do a little bit to broadcast the benefits of this. And I think, as these technologies grow and equally 5G becomes more
Mhm.
mainstream and across the whole country, it becomes possible. And not only your school area has probably got some of the best 5G coverage in the whole of the UK, which must be a boon in as well. I mean, this is I think fascinating stuff, and I just love the power of technology here, and equally the excitement that it can bring, and the opportunities, and equally, it's moving from just children just doing sort of their normal curriculum to really expanding their minds. And again, I'd sort of be fascinated to see if some have been using this, and maybe gone into topics that weren't, like you say, they want to become astronauts,
Mhm.
archaeologists, historians, or looking to sort of tourism and things like that. It's the opportunities just really seem really positive. And then equally then taking that and utilizing it for other things. I mean, just even sort of the fan experience, this is used in education. You could almost be in a stadium, couldn't you, watching a game?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you say there, you know, one of the biggest things that we see is essentially maybe like a picture on paper. It's that picture on paper brought to life. So almost like coming out of that book and then projected onto the walls around you.
Well, so the sort of Alice in Wonderland, looking at the little door could then open up, and there you are, right
Yeah.
in that sort of crazy world. Wow, that's interesting. Well, Hannah, I think I genuinely think this we could talk about this forever. I think that this explores the power of 5G technology, but equally the power of learning with it as
Mhm.
well. So, Hannah, very much thank you for coming onto our podcast. We will certainly want to showcase this to the world. And listeners, if you have been interested in what we've been talking about today, we're always trying to push forward some fascinating 5G stories and the technology and how it moves forward. Please do subscribe to Live Better Connected. We're on Spotify, we're on SoundCloud, we're on YouTube, and also our social media channels. And please do check out mobileuk.org.uk. And we look forward to you in the next episode. Thank you.